and welcome to Frankly Speaking, and I'm honored for giving you the seat on Frankly Speaking for the first time. Welcome to the show, Mr. Jaishankar. Dr. Jaishankar, let me begin by quoting you from your own book, The India Way. And you said in the book, the India way, especially now, would be more of a shaper or decider rather than just be an abstainer. Tell us how this will manifest itself on this very important occasion of the G20 that India is hosting.
Well, first of all, Navika, it's good to be on your show, and I'm glad we are beginning with that question, because I think the G20 itself is an example of how today we are a shaper. That the most consequential, the most powerful gathering of nations is taking place. We have the presidency, we have the responsibility, we have to give directions, we have to forge an agreement, and we have to shape which direction the world is going to move for the next decade. And there are some really crucial questions which are going to be debated upon and decided in the course of the next week.
Dr. Jaishankar, with Russian President Putin not likely to be here, with the fact that there are reports, not confirmed yet, but the Chinese President Xi Jinping may not be here either, do you think there are any path-breaking decisions and a consensus that we can reach in the joint communique that would be expected at the end of the summit?
Let me explain to you, and I think also for the viewers, how actually the G20 works. The G20 has a finance track. It has what's called a Sherpa track. There are about 15 ministerial tracks. They hold their meetings. There are also engagement groups of non-governmental civil society or different tracks of experts. So roughly these 200 meetings take place over a year. What the summit does is it brings everything together. And it brings everything together in terms of the big ideas. How do you implement those big ideas, the action plans? What are the new concepts? In some cases, what are the different solutions to what the world is facing? So remember, the remit of the G20, why was the G20 invented? The G20 was invented because during the global financial crisis in 2008, the world needed a forum where global growth and development could be discussed and decided. So that's what we'll be doing. We'll be pulling things together and doing that. So your point, who will be present physically, who will not be there, but remember, every country is represented. Now, who represents them is their decision. Various countries have their own requirements or the choices at various points of time, and that's something in diplomacy is respected. But I have no doubt that all 20 G20 members will be coming here with the utmost seriousness, with a great sense of purpose, very conscious of the enormous responsibility on them today, that what they will be deciding in New Delhi they know that this is something which is not the 20 countries of the world. There are another 180 countries whose future is being decided. In a way, the planet's future is being decided.
So, at a time when the world is staring at the confrontation between Russia, Ukraine, the expansionist tendencies of China, do you think some of the trust issues need to be addressed before the business, the growth, the economic engagement issues can be?
No, it doesn't quite work like that. I mean, this is international relations, okay? International relations is by nature, it's competitive, but increasingly in a globalized world, and we hope in a sustainable world, it is also collaborative. So there are a lot of issues where it's important that we work together. There are issues on which countries will have their own particular interests. So it's not realistic that everybody would agree on everything before they actually come into a meeting. So both trends will be there. But remember, G20 is primarily a collaborative forum. That's why I again repeat to you, the subject matter is global growth and development. Global growth and development is by nature a cooperative endeavor. So I think the best instincts, the greatest willingness to work together will be on display, should be on display. And that's really what we hope to see next week.
Dr. Jaishankar, let me now turn my attention to how domestic opposition has been looking at the G20.
Okay.
They are not very impressed with this G20 presidency.
Oh.
They say it's by, by turns, and it's just come to you. You're fortunate enough to be, in the treasury benches when India gets its opportunity to be the G20 president, and no big deal. Nothing that they're really expecting, and they think that you're creating a hype of self-promotion through this.
Tell me, Navika, if you don't mind my asking you a counter question. We've been G20 president since December, okay? The G20 events are being observed, organized in about 60 cities of this country, in all the states and union territories. Tell me, when you have traveled around in this last year or so, haven't you felt an excitement? Haven't you got a sense today that different cities, different institutions, it's not a Sarkari program, because that's what the opposition is used to. See, the opposition is very Lutyens-centric. For them, they remember the 1983 NAM. The 1983 NAM was focused around Vigyan Bhavan and probably created excitement for a few kilometers beyond. But this time, this term Jan Bhagidari that we use, how to involve the entirety of society. We've involved students, we've involved professional bodies, we've involved every state. And when you speak about what the opposition feels, let me tell you one thing. I have personally had conversations with chief ministers of opposition states who have told me what a great experience it has been to be part of the G20. Some of them have actually asked me, saying, can't you give us a few more events?
Are these BJP-ruled states?
No.
Or are they the opposite?
They are both. I mean, I must say one, to me a very, very sort of a kind of I would say supportive or energizing feeling which I get out of G20. Irrespective of the party, every chief minister has put their best foot forward. Every state has embraced the G20. And a lot of states, and I say this with great objectivity, even the non-BJP states. For example, I point to you the states in the south. They've all done a marvelous job. And they've all shown extreme enthusiasm for G20.
But they also charge you that, the BJP machinery is event management machinery, so they do events well. What's the big deal?
No, Navika, you're missing the point. This is not about BJP. If an event happened in, say, Kerala, event happened in Tamil Nadu, where is the BJP machinery in this? This is done by the central government with the collaboration of the state government, with other institutions involved in it. So I think the entire country has taken pride. I would say anybody who's belittling the G20, who's trying to make it as a non-event, is simply missing the mood of the people. I've been myself to events. I'm amazed at the turnout of people out there. They genuinely want to know what is the G20 about, explain it to us, where, why is it relevant for India, why is it relevant for the world? Politicians will politic. That is their nature. Unfortunately, we are also in a phase where even national achievements sometimes are being run down for partisan reasons. It's sad. But, okay, I sometimes have to temper my expectations with the realities of how other people are. But the fact is, today, across the country, if you see, and I say this really sincerely, this is not a political point. The entire country today is proud of the G20. Entire country has stepped forward to mark the G20. You know, when we say G20 is about making India ready for the world, believe me, India has shown it is ready for the world. In fact, yesterday I had the, a delegation from the International Olympic Association, and I was telling them, I said, look, when you talk in terms of organizing events, show me a country which did 60 cities and each one has competed with the other, excelled in that respect. I think this is a very proud moment for India.
You've been a career diplomat before you turned a politician, and you have seen many of these events. Do you think the political cynicism, the shrillness, the high decibels are higher now, or were they always like this?
I don't think the country is cynical. I travel a fair deal. I mean, obviously I travel a lot abroad as External Affairs Minister, but I travel a lot within the country. I feel today the people of the country, especially the younger generations of the country, actually genuinely believe in the future of the country. They have seen a decade of enormous change, for them, and they've seen difficulties, challenges of a kind, which are really mind-boggling, and COVID tops the list. There's a reason why you say it's a once-in-a-century event. So they've seen us come through very difficult times. They have seen also new opportunities, new vistas, a new kind of a template before them. Yes, I do think sometimes, the politics of the country can perhaps try to be closer to the more, I would say, hopeful public mood, because I think sometimes in the political debates there's a tendency to drag us back, or to make out as though we were living in some golden era in the past and everything has changed in the last decade for the worse, whereas actually the last decade has been a decade of enormous achievements, and which the people sense. Because at the end of the day, if you in a democracy, how do you I can have an opinion, you can have an opinion. Finally, you look at what happens in terms of the electoral verdict. I think you will see that. We saw that the change of 14 reinforced by 19, and I have every confidence that will move forward in 24.
Let me also ask you, there's a lot of talk about the global South and India's support for African countries' inclusion in the G20. What does this mean to a common man on the streets of cities in India?
Let me share with you a story on the African Union membership, but then I'll come back to the global South. Last year we were in the tail end, literally the last few minutes of the G20 in Bali. And the head of the African Union then, President Macky Sall of Senegal, he came to the head table where Indonesia, India and Italy were sitting. He was quite agitated, and he came up to Prime Minister Modi and also to President Widodo of Indonesia and said, look, we had hoped that Africa would be given a seat, and we have, but there's not even been a discussion. The entire discussion has been hijacked by another issue. So here we are, a continent of 54 countries, so, what happens to us? And it was quite sort of
agitated.
Not just agitated. There was a very, I think most of us felt there was a basis for what he was saying. And I still remember PM turned to him and said, Excellency, we are now taking over the chairship. And he said, I promise you that we will get it done. And then he looked at him and said, ye Modi ki guarantee hai. Now, a few months later, when we were reviewing where we are going on the G20. Prime Minister actually said, he said, look, we have committed to AU. And he said, you know, what happens when you do this diplomacy as usual? People keep going around in circles. So he said, I will bite the bullet. I will bell the cat. I will take the decision to request every other member to support AU, Africa's permanent membership of the G20. And he wrote off a letter, and today we have we've then, been in discussion with everybody else, and we are almost everybody has signed up for it. Now, we just met President Saul at the BRICS summit, and he of course said, I'm very happy that this has happened. Then he said, I still remember the word he used. He said, you used some Hindi word, but I know it meant Modi's guarantee. So he said, I was sure, therefore, that it would be done. So why I'm saying this to you is, look, I spoke to you earlier about the transformation in this country, that in the last 10 years, if you look very objectively at the progress in this country, look at the infrastructure, look at the institutions. I mean, you take any metric, how many airports were there before 2014, how many are there now? How many roads were there before, how much road was there, how much is there now? How many railway lines? So you can get sort of
statistical evidence
of how it moves. So today, one of the reasons why the government and Prime Minister personally has credibility is that when he says something, he means it. He strains every sinew to get that particular commitment done. Now you've got to understand that is also today our international image. The international image is that the same Modi who can do so much, who can create such an enormous transformation within India, if he also commits abroad, if he's promised that he will do something, that also is something that he will deliver. So that then begs the question, why Global South? You've got to understand that at the end of the day, this is a kind of a holistic worldview. What is today, if you ask the core thinking of the government today about our own country? It is about leaving no one behind. Okay, that the last mile, benefits must reach the last mile. So when we say Samaveshi Bharat, that's what we mean. Inclusiveness must not be a slogan. It must be a policy. It must be an action. It must lead to verifiable, quantifiable, judgeable delivery on the ground. Now, if you are someone who believes, has this worldview, you would have it not just within the country. Your worldview doesn't stop on the boundary. It extends outside as well. So yes, we have our national interest, but we have, like we have a sense of social justice at home, we have a sense of social justice abroad as well. Now, when you look today, because it brings us back to the G20, what is G20 today struggling with? G20 is struggling with the impact of the COVID, struggling with high interest rates, with the Ukraine conflict, with climate events, with debt. So the world is in distress. There are, out of 200 countries in the world, about 150 countries who are struggling to make their ends meet. And these are the countries of the Global South. And what we did, therefore, was that when we assumed the chairship of the G20, Prime Minister said, look, let's get the people not on the table talking to us. So we had a conference. Everybody starts by calling a conference of who's coming. We called a conference of who's not coming and said, please come and tell us what is your pain, what is your concern, what do you want me to talk about there? Because you won't be there. I'm talking for you. And we did that exercise, Voice of the Global South, in January. It is that which has given us today the strength today to speak so effectively for so many countries. So these issues of, health, nutrition, climate action, sustainability, digital, gender gap, these are the issues we are going to be putting on the table. And these we are putting on behalf of the global south. So I'm new to politics, but one of my experiences was among the district which was given to me we have like a development commitment.
Yeah.
Is what we call an aspirational district. So it's a district called Narmada, in Gujarat. Just like I look at the needs of an aspirational district, that I must care more for them. I must target my programs on them. I must worry about them and ensure that they do not get left behind. On the contrary, that the gaps close, which is what, by the way, has happened with many aspirational districts. I have the same problem in international relations. That today for me the care for Africa, for other countries of Asia, for Pacific, is coming out of that.
In association with 99 Acres.
Jaishankar, and it's probably the duty of the fifth largest economy in the world to do it, to be more inclusive, and does generate the humane side of the growth story, the wealth story that everybody looks at. But at the end of the day, people are going to judge the Delhi summit of the G20 on what comes out of it in the end. And India's image in the world will be shaped by this G20 summit and what comes out. As foreign minister, you have traveled a lot, you have a first-hand sense of what happens, but the fact that Russia, Ukraine and Western countries have made statements about their discomfort on the conflict, and that India, its own relations with Russia create a conundrum there. There has also been speculation about China. How sure are you that there will be an agreement at the end of the G20 summit? Because that's when India can stand up and say, just like in Bali, the Prime Minister played a very crucial role. How do we get that breakthrough in New Delhi?
Look, I am convinced, based on my own contacts, that every country coming to Delhi feels that sense of responsibility. That they know today that there's a UN report, of how much the world has fallen behind in terms of health, in terms of education, in terms of nutrition, in terms of infrastructure in the last 5 years because of COVID. I mean, it's not specifically targeting COVID, it is about where are we on sustainable development goals. So the fact is, there's a very acute sense today that the world is in a crisis. Debt is a very big issue. You saw what happened in Sri Lanka. There are today double-digit number of countries who are groaning under debt, who are defaulting on their payments. So, the real concerns which will be debated, do understand one thing. The G20 is not the UN Security Council. This is not the forum where you will have a defining discussion on, say, for example, the Ukraine conflict. But you will have a defining discussion on global growth and development. Now, I grant you that, it is not that you can wish away conflicts or say that they do not have an impact on the world. That is a very understandable view to have. So, my sense is, there will be many issues. The issues will be prioritized. People will come at it from their national positions. That's also what diplomacy is about. But our responsibility, in a way, would be to make sure that everybody comes here understanding, what is at stake. And my sense, certainly till now, is that, they all get it. So I think people will come here wanting, in some ways, to set directions for where the world is going for the next decade.
And there is no magic potion.
Well, You know, diplomacy is not about magic potions. It's a far more arduous and not always palatable exercise.
I thought Amrit Kal, kuch Amrit hoga aapke paas.
No, well, look, you know, maybe you and I can sit and talk after the 10th of September on this issue. But I say this, that I have met almost every G20 minister, spoken to them in the last few weeks and months. And I know that they or their own leaders, they are very cognizant of the responsibility that they shoulder.
So let's get down to China. It's the elephant in the room, at least in India. And the opposition in India has been saying that your government has been less than transparent on the issue of China. And of course, they've actually charged you with the fact that a lot of land has been ceded to China.
Navika, first of all, whatever has happened in the last 3 years, whether our disengagement has led to any outcome, which it has. We had a disengagement on Galwan, we had a disengagement on Pangong So, we had one on PP15, PP17A. We have actually gone to Parliament and made a statement to Parliament. Defence Minister has made a statement to Parliament. Now, obviously, when there is a live military situation, you know, no government is going to put out, you know, where the troops are deployed, in what numbers they are deployed, etc., unless you are wanting to help the other side, which I hope none of us do. Now, I want you to contrast this, okay? And I'll take you a little bit down memory lane. You know, in 1986, there was a Chinese intrusion in a place called Sumdurongchu, okay? This became a big issue because the army chief at that time, General Sundarji, initiated a counter-response, and it took us from 1986 till 1995, 9 years to negotiate it. We finally got an outcome in 1995. Now, I'm not saying it will take us 9 years, but I want you to appreciate, even today, what was negotiated, what the outcome was, who moved back, which post, how much, is not public.
Okay. And that's the problem, not public.
No, because at that time, people did not play politics with it. This is not a problem. This is whether you take your national security seriously or not. If you feel national security is a football to be kicked around for politics, by all means. But if you actually take national security seriously and say, okay, there is a serious situation, you know, if the defense minister tells us that, look, this is what is happening, he gives us, I mean, in this case, adequately effective, credible explanation of what happened, you accept it as part of our responsible democracy. So I want you to contrast. We have, every time actually a negotiation has gone somewhere, we have actually come to Parliament and said this is what has happened. Now,
but Dr. Jaishankar, Rahul Gandhi says he was in Ladakh a few weeks ago.
Yeah, no, I look, again, I saw what he said. And he said, you know, I now have this great concern about land. Okay? So tell me one thing. Did we not lose 38,000 square kilometers of land in the 1950s and 60s? Now, when Rahul Gandhi went to Olympics, he was not bothered about the land which we had lost. He has spoken recently very laudatory remarks about Belt and Road Initiative, you know, when he was abroad. Belt and Road Initiative goes through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Is that not our land? So you have no concern about land when it comes to Belt and Road. You have no concern about lands which were lost earlier during Nehru's time. Suddenly, you now seize on something and say, oh, I have great concern about land. Look, you've got to understand one thing. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors which is being used in this game. You know, the cleverness, I'll give you two examples. you had these reports saying Chinese have built another bridge in Pangong Tso. Okay? A normal person who doesn't know the details is somehow given the impression this was some change of land position which happened now. And see, they built a bridge. Do you know this land was taken before 1962 and thereafter at 1962? Nobody tells you that. They then tell you, there are these model villages coming up. So there was one big controversy over one in Arunachal. That place in Arunachal was taken by China in 1959. It is a subject of a parliamentary debate in 1959. But see how cleverly they make it seem as though dekho abhi abhi hua hai. So look, I know politics is politics. I'm now in politics, okay? I grant you, I'm still learning. But I do still believe as a conscientious citizen of this country that on some issues, there are some issues which are bigger than politics. And, we spoke earlier about cynicism and things. This is one part which I would say has really distressed me, to see, the kind of games that are being played.
By Rahul Gandhi?
No, by not just him, by a whole set of people.
But Dr. Jaishankar, what is wrong if the opposition asks you, has there been land ceded to China? It's a yes or no question,
No,
number one.
No,
number two,
I'm sorry, no, please. I think you're not understanding the ground situation or the complication of this.
But why can't people ask, why can't we patrol the areas that we were patrolling earlier? Why are there 19 rounds of commander talks and what have we achieved out of them? These are...
Hello, Navika, are you missing what I'm saying?
We shouldn't ask.
No. You should try to understand what I'm saying. I am trying to tell you, did we not have disengagement in Galwan?
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Did we not have in Pangong Tso? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Did we not have PP-15? Yes or no? Yes. 17A? Yes or no? And then you're telling me, what did we achieve?
Is there a possibility of a parliament session to debate and discuss the issue of China, because that's the opposition's demand? And now there is a parliament session that has been called on the 18th of September. Will China be an issue on the table?
No, look, I mean, look, the disengagement with China is not going to be negotiated by Navika Kumar on television or by a parliamentary debate. It is going to be negotiated by professionals, by military commanders. This is a serious matter. Please understand that. This is not a debate for you to win on TV. This is something which has consequences for our national security, for our troop deployment. So the professional people are doing it. Why do you have a problem with that? Do you not trust the Indian Army? Give me a yes or no.
No, I trust, but I'm raising the questions the opposition also raises. And some people feel that if the opposition raises these questions, it's well within its rights to raise that question.
Sure. Look, I have no problem. Then be prepared to hear my answer, no? If I tell you, I say that when you suggest that a bridge has been built and somehow it is a fault of this government, I say you're lying. That bridge is built on land which has been under Chinese occupation since 1962. Please be prepared to hear that answer also.
Absolutely. And on the issue of trade, questions are also raised that when we had, the confrontation with China, we banned a few apps, we banned a few, import items. But even after doing that, trade with China is going on increasing in favor of China. How do you respond to that charge?
No, see, we today are facing a problem not just vis-a-vis China. This is a problem of our manufacturing ability, of our competitiveness, because frankly of decades of economic policy which did not support the building of economic strengths, which did not support our industry, which did not support our labor in the manner in which we should have. Okay. Instead, people saw importing from China and importing from other countries, not only China, as a way of a quick solution for their needs out here. In my view, that was a fundamentally flawed economic outlook, which was justified in the name of globalization. Okay. Now, today, people have woken up to it. The COVID helped us to wake up to it. That there's a much sharper realization. Many of us had that realization earlier, but I think the public has a sharper realization. Other people in different walks of life have that realization that a big country like us, we must build up our own strength, which is why we have an Atmanirbhar policy. Now, an Atmanirbhar policy is implemented through a Make in India program. Now, here is the challenge in a way. Even if you are to push Make in India and Atmanirbhar policy the fullest, with the greatest sincerity and effort, it will, which we are doing, by the way, it will still take you time to make, to have the necessary production in India and the capacities. Okay. Meanwhile, your economy is growing. You can't stop economic growth because you're not producing at home. So I think what you will see is in more and more areas, what was previously imported from outside
will be manufactured
out here. But here again, I mean, this is the third time we are coming to politics, and this time I'm bringing it up. Okay, the same people who made industry difficult in this country, who made employment difficult in this country, who used environment as an argument to stop growth and progress in this country, who delayed every infrastructure project which was necessary for this country. Today, suddenly they take a view that, no, we should, if you're serious, why are we importing more? But you had 10 years where you didn't do what you had to do. And now you're saying, okay, in the 11th year, the new guy coming in must solve all your problems. So it doesn't work that way. It will take time for us to grow. But to do that, again, just like if you, to me, a starting point, what is the starting point of defending our borders? For me, it is build your border infrastructure and back your army. That's what this government has done. What is the starting point for building your economy? Do Make in India. Now, if you trash Make in India, if you say, Make in India, it's a fraud program, kuch nahi hoga, ye jumla hai, you are lowering national morale.
You got into politics, I think.
Huh? No, I don't do politics. You are lowering national morale at a very time when you should be taking off, right? So, I look, just see, I give you an example. We came back from USA. One of the really big achievements we had was to start getting the semiconductor industry, global semiconductor industry, to come to this country. Why did we do that? Because we know today semiconductors is a key metric of national strength. Now, if the moment to do that, you have people who are running down saying, all right, you are spending money on this, why are you doing this? So every time you try to do something good, there are always voices here who say, we shouldn't be doing this, this is infructuous expenditure of money. So the point is, today there has to be a commitment between ease of doing business, between Gati Shakti, between making life less bureaucratic, and then strengthening human resources, digital India, skill India, innovation, startups. I think we are today getting our act together. And let me tell you, to take you back to G20, today countries in the world respect us because I hear, when I go abroad, most of the time, they are interested in what we have done in terms of digital delivery, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of innovation. So they talk about, look at Chandrayaan. For them, Chandrayaan is actually the story of what India is capable of. And I can tell you, it was a showstopper in the BRICS. That it became the conversation we just took over.
What were the reactions?
I mean, look, there were countries and leaders who were even more excited than I was. A lot of them, especially the global south, because mostly they were global south countries. Most of them actually had that sense, look, your victory is our victory, your achievement is our achievement. We feel we can also one day do it. Today India motivates the world abroad. We should not, in India, as Indians, we should not forget that. That's also our responsibility.
But sorry to bring in the opposition, but the opposition says this is the scientists' achievement. The government, Prime Minister Modi, just hogging the limelight and naming of the landing point Shiv Shakti. They see, they see politics in that as well.
No, look, if you are compulsively political, you will see politics in the air that you breathe. I'm sorry, that's your problem. You need therapy. Okay?
What therapy would you recommend to Mr. Rahul Gandhi?
The 2024 elections.
And
then the verdict will be the therapy.
And you think he has no chance to win?
Look,
they have an India alliance coming up.
So no, let me come back to your
the Chandrayaan question.
Okay. When you said about Prime Minister Modi, look, I went with him because we came straight from a foreign trip, landed in Bangalore early morning. We were waiting for him to join us. Obviously all the key ISRO people were there. And I can tell you, every one of them still remembered. Not just that he had come here at the Chandrayaan 3, but that he came for Chandrayaan 2. So please understand, yes, it's an achievement of our scientists. But for a scientist, the national leadership and motivation is also a very powerful force. If they believe that their Prime Minister gives the necessary priority, the resources, the encouragement, do you think it doesn't impact them?
Yeah, and nobody can forget the visuals of him hugging former ISRO chief
and that's why I'm sure you've listened to that speech. I think it was important he made that point, that there will be setbacks in life, but the setback should never be a discouragement. It should be a further motivation. That's the kind of message today the country wants to hear. Because that's why, when you talk about 2024, I think in 2024 you will get two competing visions. I think you will get a vision that, look, we have achieved many things. There are still many goals to do. Amrit Kal is about that we have today the capability of becoming a developed state. We are on the right trajectory. I think one will be a message of optimism, a kind of can-do spirit, track record, which lays out that trajectory. And I think one will be, everything is falling apart, nothing is working, country is going on a dangerous path. I think the country will have a sort of a pessimistic outlook and an optimistic outlook based on record. So one will be a message of hope, and one I think will not be.
India in the last 9 years has very successfully decoupled the conversation in the world of India-Pak. Pakistan is now nowhere ever mentioned in the same breath as India. So that is a huge achievement. Recently, we've heard statements coming in from Pakistan that they now want to talk to us, they want to resolve issues. What is your view on Pakistan, and what is India's strategy with relation to Pakistan?
See, every country wants good relations with neighbors. It's natural. No country can accept a neighbor practicing cross-border terrorism as their right. To me, that should be equally natural. Unfortunately, we did not always send out that signal in the past. So, when I look at our Pakistan policy, I think the country is fairly clear. What it doesn't want to see is that kind of what we saw after 26/11. Okay, that Pakistan needs to be effectively deterred, and that if there are actions, there will be consequences to that action, and that's what we have seen thereafter. But again, I come to it, look, today Pakistan has its own problems. Okay, a lot of those problems is for them to sort out. You could say it's a moment for them to reflect on their choices, their growth models, their way of governance, and that's their national prerogative to do so. But we would hope that out of all of this, the realization dawns on them that living in perpetual hostility to a neighbor and practicing cross-border terrorism is not a policy that will serve their own interests well. I mean, you see today how the world talks of India and how the world talks of Pakistan. I think that itself.
But did we make a mistake in 2014 when, the Prime Minister invited them for the swearing-in ceremony and tried, what the opposition calls the biryani parties, etc.?
No, I mean,
was that a mistake?
No, look, I think in 2014 we were sending a signal that we would be willing to work with all our neighbors who wanted to work with us. Is it your case that we should not have sent a signal, or that we should not be working with our neighbors? The fact is, we have been, I think, very clear with Pakistan. If you want to work with us, we are happy to work with you. We have not closed the door to them. But the door is not open to terrorism as it used to be in the past. The door is supposed to be open for the positive things of life, for trade, for people-to-people exchanges, etc. But if on the other hand the door is misused for terrorism, then obviously you cannot be indifferent to it.
So in the near future, any engagement?
No, I think we'll have to wait and see what their thinking is and what the policy is. I think our thinking is very clear.
Dr. Jaishankar, let's do a fun rapid fire round.
Okay.
You're all charged up.
With which you will end this, right?
With which I'll end this, provided you give us some very interesting answers. Life as a diplomat or life as a politician? Which one is better?
If you get it in the right sequence, both are good.
Russia or China?
I learned Russian as my foreign service language.
Okay, so Russia better than China.
US
and China.
I've been ambassador in China.
You've said your answer, and people will make their own conclusions. Okay. US or China?
I've done 2 postings in the United States.
1 in China, so US is better.
One. I didn't say that, you said that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to help people make their conclusions.
Look, I am a person who grew up in the diplomatic profession, but the political profession is not that different sometimes. You don't always make exclusive choices.
A little bit of that and a little bit of this. Okay, so also tell me, postings abroad or working in India?
For me, all said and done, the most exciting ones were working in India.
Parliament or MEA?
You know, when you are in MEA, you are also in Parliament, but in the gallery. So your question should be Parliament floor or Parliament gallery?
Okay, Parliament gallery.
Any day the floor.
The floor?
Yeah, of course.
So are you a quintessential politician now?
No, I'm not. I'm someone who fairly late in life have come upon a new calling, and I'm learning on the job.
Your relationship with Prime Minister Modi?
Good, I think.
Can we be the fly on the wall for an anecdote where you had a discussion with him that's impressed you?
Oh, you have to be many flies on many walls for that. Look, it would, to me, would vary. I mean, could be a cultural insight, you know. Sometimes stories he shared with me about his travels, especially travels before he became Prime Minister.
To China when you were there?
No, not only China, you know, he's spoken even when he was a Karyakarta, when he has gone abroad, his US travels. In fact, I found I think he's traveled much more in the US. And in fact, he was telling me that most of it was on a Greyhound bus, or those days there used to be a Delta package, you know, Delta Airlines package. Yeah. So some of it is his travel, his insights, his cultural insights. A lot of it is, I find he's a very technology, no, not just savvy, because I'm not, you know, but it's one part of it is people are technology savvy, but one part of it is people are technology strategy. I mean, where does technology fit into the
day-to-day benefit for people?
No, and where the country is going, you know. I mean, I heard him talk about, say, green hydrogen, electric mobility, at a time when it was not common in India for people to prioritize that. So, very much a futuristic person.
Okay. And your choice between Rahul Gandhi, Mamata Banerjee, Nitish Kumar, Sharad Pawar, Akhilesh Yadav.
This is where the rapid fire runs out of ammunition. So thank you very much.
So you have no choices among these? Super. Fun interview with you, some serious conversations, and I liked that the MEA and diplomat stiffness also came off a few times. Enjoyable. I hope viewers enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed it, Dr. Jaishankar. Thank you very much for joining me on Frankly Speaking.
Thank you.